Week 13 of the fantasy baseball season, and here's a few hitters I'd look to drop this week. The first guy, Jesse Winker of the Seattle Mariners. So Jesse Winker here suspended now 6 games with that crazy brawl between the Mariners and Angels a few weeks ago. So Winker on the season, it just hasn't been a good year. Last season, he had a great year with the Cincinnati Reds with 24 homers, 71 RBIs with a 305 average. But this year here, it was probably a fluke than last season with the numbers he's been putting up. 6 homers, 33 RBIs, 26 runs scored, 226 average. But the on base is still pretty solid at a 341. But like I mentioned, he's not showing powers, Winker. That batting average is way down there in the dumps. And maybe Cincinnati was a good place for him. But this season with Seattle, he just can't find it as Winker. And now with the 6-game suspension, I don't think he's a guy you really should wait on here. I know it's only a week pretty much he's missing his Winker, but he's not getting anything going. He's had a couple big hits here and there for Seattle, but not really contributing for fantasy owners. And he's still owned in 63% of fantasy leagues, which is surprising to me. June 27th versus Baltimore 0-for-3. June 28th versus Baltimore 1-for-4, 2 RBIs. June 29th versus Baltimore 2-for-5 with a run. June 30th versus Oakland 2-for-4 with a run. July 1st versus Oakland 0-for-4 with a rib. July 2nd versus Oakland 0-for-4. And July 3rd versus Oakland 0-for-3. So right here, he's been in a slump as well as Winker before he got suspended. In an 0-for-11 slump. And even when he was hitting the baseball a little bit, he's still not driving in runs or showing power. So right here, Winker's an easy drop this week. Yeah, he could turn things around, but I just don't see it for this season. The next guy is Luke Voit of the San Diego Padres. So the Padres getting Voit in the offseason from the New York Yankees. And Voit, he's been hit or miss this year as well. 10 home runs, 35 RBIs, 29 runs scored, a 230 average, and a 317 on base. But when Voit is hitting for power and RBIs, that's when his value is at its best. But besides that here, he's a below batting average hitter. And the last few weeks here, he's not hitting for power as well. Only 1 homer, 4 RBIs with 2 runs scored and a 179 average in the last 2 weeks. So right here, there's no need to hold on to Luke Voit. I know he could go on a stretch where he could hit 8 to 10 home runs in a month. But right now, he's not getting the job done at all or showing power in the last few weeks. And he's still owned as well in 41% of fantasy leagues. So if he gets hot, you should go out there and get him again on your team. But right now, he's not doing much of anything as Voit. June 28th at Arizona, 2-for-4 with a run. June 29th at Arizona, 1-for-5 with a rib. July 1st at the Dodgers, 0-for-4. July 2nd at the Dodgers, 2-for-4 with a homer. July 3rd at the Dodgers, 1-for-4 with an RBI. And July 4th versus the Mariners, 0-for-3. So right now, not much of anything for Voit, like I mentioned. 1 home run in the last couple weeks here. And he's not hitting for a good average as well. So right now, while he's struggling, and he's a streaky hitter, no doubt about it, this is the time to drop him. And if he gets back on a hot streak, he'll probably be out there in most fantasy leagues where you could go out there and get him. The next guy's Thairo Estrada, Francisco Giants. So Estrada, it's been a pretty good, surprising season here for him. After we didn't see him do much with the New York Yankees over the last few seasons. And he qualifies at second short in outfield. So great versatility for fantasy baseball in the season. 6 home runs, 31 RBIs, 11 stolen bases, 40 runs scored, 256 average with a 311 on base. But the last few weeks here before he went on the COVID injury list, only 1 homer, 4 RBIs, 2 stolen bases, 4 runs scored, an awful 192 average, and a 250 on base. So Estrada, another guy in a slump here. I know he can help you in stolen bases and runs scored, but he's not even been doing that as much here in the last few weeks. The last few games for Estrada, June 22nd at the Braves, 0-for-4 with a bag. June 23rd at Atlanta, 1-for-3 with a run and a rib. June 25th versus Cincinnati, 1-for-3, a homer, an RBI, a stolen base, 2 runs scored. June 26th versus the Reds, 1-for-3 with a rib. June 28th versus the Tigers, 0-for-4. And June 29th versus the Tigers, 0-for-4. So right here, he was slumping before he went out July 1st. Here's Thairo Estrada. I know the versatility is great, but he wasn't hitting the baseball, and his stolen bases were going down as well a little bit. So right here, when he comes back off the COVID list, maybe he could get things going again, is Thairo Estrada. But right now, I think he's owned in way too many fantasy leagues for a guy who has mediocre numbers on the season in 64% of leagues. And this week here, I would drop him because in my video the other day, I gave a lot of good options to add on the wire, and I'd rather have some of those guys like a Nico Horner or Luis Urias or even a Juan Yepes over Estrada right now. The next guy is Joey Votto of the Cincinnati Reds. Votto last season, he had a resurgence, especially in the summer months. But this season here, it's a tale of two tapes. He's been way off and not doing anything. Is Votto 6 home runs, 25 RBIs, 22 runs scored, a 210 average, and a 332 on base. So last season, I believe it was June or July, Votto had 14 home runs in that month. And last year, he finished with 36 and 99. And this year, he'll be lucky to even get 50 RBIs the way it's looking here for Votto. The last 2 weeks for him, 1 homer, 3 RBIs, 4 runs scored, and a 222 average with a 314 on base. Votto, the only thing we know with him is this guy's got a good eye at the plate and gets on base a lot. But besides that, he does nothing pretty much here for fantasy owners of the Reds this season. And I don't know how he's still only 47% of fantasy leagues. I think it's a no-brainer to drop Votto. I know people are probably hoping he puts up numbers like he did last season in the summer months. But this year, it doesn't look that way. June 28th at the Cubs, 0 for 4. June 29th at the Cubs, 2 for 4, running a rib. June 30th at the Cubs, 3 for 5. A homer and RBI, 2 runs scored. July 1st versus Atlanta, 0 for 4. July 2nd versus Atlanta, 0 for 3. July 3rd versus Atlanta, 0 for 2. And July 4th at the Mets, 0 for 4. So right here, Votto, he hasn't done anything. 0 for 13 in his last 13 at-bats here. And he's got a tough matchup versus the New York Mets here, where their pitching staff's getting healthier. And Max Scherzer's pitching tonight, I believe, versus Votto in this Red team. So it's going to be probably another 0 for 1 for 4 ball game in that one for Joey Votto. So right now, while he's doing nothing at all pretty much, he's been idle, is Votto this season in fantasy baseball. There's no reason he should be owned in 47% of fantasy leagues, and he's definitely a guy I would drop this week in the 5th and final hitter. I look to drop Reyes of the Cleveland Guardians. So Reyes last season, a 30 home run guy, but this season, it's just been a wreck for him. I know he missed some time, but he still has 181 at-bats, 6 home runs, 20 RBIs, 15 runs scored, a 210 average, and a 262 on base. So his on base to batting average ratio is bad. And he's always been a guy that don't work the count really or walk and strikes out a lot. Already 80 strikeouts and 181 at-bats. Last couple weeks, a little bit better. 3 homers, 8 RBIs, 250 average with 6 runs scored. But he's a guy that just doesn't do it for me here, is Reyes. I know he's got power, but this season, like I mentioned, he's not going to live up to the numbers like he did last year. What has to do with the injury, but also this Guardian team, they've been a hit-and-miss team as a unit this whole season. June 28th versus the Twins, 1 for 4 with a rib. June 29th versus Minnesota, 0 for 4 with a rib. June 30th versus Minnesota, 0 for 1 with a run. July 2nd in the doubleheader versus the Yankees, 2 for 8, a homer and RBI, had 4 strikeouts. July 3rd versus the Yankees, 2 for 4, a homer, 2 RBIs. And July 7th in the doubleheader at the Tigers, 1 for 7 with a run and a rib. So right, 86% of fantasy leagues. And yes, he could turn things around, but this season, it just hasn't been a good one here. With injuries and also not a lot of good protection in that Guardian lineup. And him not showing the big power numbers, even though I know he's hit 2 home runs in the last couple days here. But I think Reyes isn't a guy I would count on for fantasy owners. And he's a guy I would drop this week in 10 and 12 team leagues. So that's a few hitters I would drop here in week 13 of the fantasy baseball season.